one and all. Today, we are happy to have James on board with us. A warm welcome to you, James.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, this is going to be, I had to actually prepare a little bit for this talk. It's not an easy one. I was doing a reading for somebody yesterday. He had 5 planets in the 5th house. 5 planets in the 5th house. So I have a very intense 5th house. The Saturn and the Sun is there, and Jupiter aspects it, and he had to mute. He had to put himself on mute because he started laughing when I said, "This is a kind of chart where you're going to be a thinker. You could work in a think tank. Not that you would, because I really don't know what I don't know what the career house would look like to make a person in a think tank, because I mean, I could speculate, but I've never done a chart for someone in a think tank. But you know, when you have 4 or 5 planets in the 5th house, assuming they're not all afflicted, you're going to have a thinker, a heavy duty thinker. So I said, one of the things that's going to happen to you is that you're going to be really frustrated at people that don't think. Most people don't want to think. He started laughing so hard that he put me on mute, so I couldn't hear him laughing. He told me later. And then I also mentioned the think tank business. So I'm mentioning this for a reason. It's because it's really clear to me that you cannot become an astrologer by reading the book and taking the information and reading the book. It doesn't work that way. You can get all the hints, you can get all the tips, and you need to get all the tips, and you need to understand what the planets mean and what the houses mean. If you don't, you can't be an astrologer. But that's not going to make you a great astrologer. What's going to make you a great astrologer is the thinking process. I've been saying this for the last several months because that's what my book is about. It'll be out in mid-February. It's all about the thought process, okay? So, can you guess what I've been thinking about for the last couple of years and haven't been able to figure out? What the hell's going on with the world? What the hell is going on with the world? So I was going through my book for the 27th time. You know, when I was younger, if I wrote a book, I had to get it out as soon as possible. I finally become an adult. And I said, no, I'm not going to put the book out on Mercury retrograde, even though we could have. I'll wait until February to pass the Mercury. I wouldn't normally do that because I was too anxious. So in the meantime, waiting, I wound up writing a 13-page sutra. Now, a sutra is supposed to be a thread, but I wrote a 13-page section, which was brutally difficult to write. And you'll see it in the book. I'm not going to talk about it. But the other thing was that as I was editing, I was reading about, and I've said this before, mundane astrology doesn't work the way people are doing it. You know, the harmonic convergence, there were 6 planets trying each other, and it was going to be the end of war and the coming of harmony. That was 1987. That was even before 9/11, the World Trade Towers. And you had the cardinal cross and the world didn't come to an end. And you have when I wrote my first book, I mentioned the age of Aquarius is coming. And in the revision in 2020, I had to pull that out. There's no age of Aquarius. Where the hell's that? I mean, maybe there is someday, but there ain't no Aquarius that I see. So I was reading this, and I was reading about what does work. So I have a long sutra about mundane astrology not working. And I use the chart of February 3rd, 1962 in America, which in India would be February 4th, 1962. And you have Rahu in Cancer and all the other planets, and all the other planets in Capricorn. So this means you have Rahu. We're not using Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, okay? So you draw the chart for the United States, February 3rd, 1962, or Bombay, India, February 4th, 1962. This is what you're going to see. Rahu in Cancer. Then you're going to see in Capricorn, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, and Ketu. All the planets. And you'd think the world would come to an end February 3rd, 1962, but nothing happened. Nothing happened. Something happened 8 months later, but that's not mundane astrology. So then, after that sutra about why mundane doesn't work, and every month you get these newsletters from astrologers, look what's happening, the world's going to this and the world's going to that, and it's 90% nonsense. But the next sutra is how mundane astrology actually does work. And it works when planets, mainly the major planets, go into a new sign. So when Pluto went into Leo in the tropical zodiac, and this is an interesting point too, the tropical zodiac and the sidereal zodiac work so well that when you see a major planet enter a sign in the tropical, something happens. If it's a major planet, Uranus, Pluto, something will happen. And then 10, 12 years later, when it hits the sidereal same sign, again, things happen. So in 1939, it was Pluto in Leo, entered Leo, and there were 365 films made, which is way more than usual in 1939. And you had the best film year ever with The Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind. It's known as the greatest film year, Pluto in Leo. And then in 1954, Pluto goes into Leo in the sidereal system, and you have one film that comes out that changes the world of film. The film was On the Waterfront, and suddenly Marlon Brando gave a realistic performance instead of a theatrical performance like all the other actors. And that he was using the method, the Stanislavski method. It was very realistic. Film acting was never the same again. Films were never the same again. And then Pluto entered Sagittarius, for example, in the tropical system. And then you had the O.J. Simpson case. And then some years later, what year was it? 2005 and 6, Pluto went into Sagittarius in the sidereal system. And I didn't do a lot of research, but because there were so many things listed, but the Pope died when Pluto went into Sag in the sidereal. And more importantly, the astronomers lost their minds and downgraded Pluto. They downgraded Pluto. Anyway, I don't know what happened with Pluto and Sag so much because I'd have to research it. And then Pluto goes into Capricorn in the tropical system, and the Great Recession happens. Now that, to some people, if they're doing well, it looks like, well, I had a couple of bad years and then things got normal. But that's not really what happened. The system really collapsed. And it changed the world. There's no older people, if they had $1 million, would put it in the bank and they'd live on the interest for the rest of their life and keep their million. After that, 2008, you put your money in the bank and there's no interest. And kids now have to live at home with their parents. That was major. Pluto in Capricorn was major. And Capricorn is the sign of the authority and the system. Capricorn is the main system. The system was collapsing when it hit the tropical, and it caused all kinds of problems. And that was just the start. So Pluto goes into Capricorn in the sidereal chart, goes into Capricorn in January to June approximately of 2020, and then backs up, then goes back into it a week before the riots, the January 6th United States Capitol riots, all that. So one thing that I need to say about when you're looking at a planet going into a sign is that you have to be careful. It doesn't have to be the month or the 3 or 4 months. It can be within a year. It usually is. Like if you look at when Uranus went into Taurus, it wasn't instantaneous that that Bitcoin came up, but it was within 6 months or a year. That's the way it works. Part of that is the fact that we don't know the exact Aya Namsha. How do we know the exact Aya Namsha? Everybody's got a different one, right? I mean, generally, I use Lahiri or Krishnamurti, but it could be off by half a degree. Lahiri didn't even agree with the Lahiri Aya Namsha because it was a compromise with 8 different astronomers. So it's not always exact, but in any case. So one thing that I'm really against, and I have to alert people, you cannot simply say, oh, I got married, and when I got married, it was Venus and Mars dasha bhukti or sun moon. No, sun moon was good because I got married. It doesn't work that way. You have to find the actual symbolism. You can't just say this happened at this time, so it means that these planets mean this. It doesn't work that way. You have to think about it and see whether those planets really do have anything to do with marriage or like that.
Seventh
So
house, yeah. That's yes.
You cannot rectify charts by saying, oh, I got rich in the Mars dasha, so Mars must be good. Maybe it's good, but there could be a lot of times what happens, like it happened yesterday. I'm doing a chart and I said, well, this is a bad dasha. He said, yeah, but I made a ton of money, right? And I said, yeah, well, it wasn't because of that planet. That planet's massively afflicted. How old were you? You were 35 when that dasha started. Why did you make money? The horoscope as a whole is phenomenal for money. So as he's living his life, he's going to make a ton of money. But that particular dasha that was afflicted, that was not the cause. That's not how you do astrology. And you got to think about it. So I've been thinking about what the heck is going on with the world. And finally, when I was looking for typos and I was looking at those sections, it finally hit me. So we had the collapse of the economy when it went into the tropical. So Pluto went in for 6 months in 2020. Then on December 30th, 2020, a week before the riots, it went into Capricorn. I'm not trying to say, oh, look, a week before, that's, it doesn't always have to work that way. It can be 6 months or a year. But here's the point. Capricorn is the authority and it's the system. And the systems are collapsing. And Pluto is a planet of dictators and the mafia and coercion and domineering. Now, there's all these astrologers running around saying, I know what's happening. There's a Pluto return for the United States. No, I'm sorry, that's not it. Because I'm not saying that doesn't have something to do with the United States. But if you look at the world is going towards authoritarianism. And in particular, and so Pluto, when Pluto was discovered, the mafia gained prominence, the nuclear bomb came into existence, and you had Mussolini and you had Hitler, and you had these domineering Plutonian forces. So the issue here was this. When Pluto did that, it also corresponded with the pandemic as well. So you had the pandemic, you had the United States riots, but forget the United States for a minute. Pluto into Capricorn was a death. It's a worldwide pandemic. It's a worldwide killer. Okay. And there's nothing about Capricorn that is particularly health oriented. So I'm not going to say Pluto in Capricorn caused the pandemic. That doesn't exactly make sense to me, but the pandemic shut down the whole system. But
yes.
here's what does make sense. The authorities and the systems are falling apart. Now, this makes it seem like, oh, Pluto must be a devastating planet, and every time it goes into a sign, devastation occurs. No, devastation doesn't occur. In Capricorn, it is devastating the world. Authoritarianism and domineering, and political problems. So I said, well, what the hell's with Capricorn? Is Pluto fallen in Capricorn? No, it's not considered fallen there. And so it strikes me that the governments. Capricorn is the system, and Capricorn is the government. End of story. Capricorn's the government. So I think that what's happening is that Pluto is the planet of death and rebirth. It destroys and then builds back. And the governments around the world have been so corrupt. The governments are not doing what they say they're doing. They're doing completely other stuff. They're not doing, so if the governments are corrupt, if they're in bad shape, Pluto's going to kick the living daylights out of them. Now, here's the thing. So another thought that I was having for the last 5 years is, where did Donald Trump come from? And by that, I mean, I have never seen a horoscope half as strong as his. Not Hitler, not FDR, not Rosa, Kennedy, none of them, Bush, none of them. They're not even half as strong. Here comes this guy whose horoscope is so powerful, has no political ideology even, and comes to rule the world. And if you think that he lost and he's not ruling the world, think again. He is still, well, the world, the United States, he is still ruling the United States. Even though we have a different president, the whole other party is in back of him. This is a president who lost the election and is still ruling the party. And when he rules the party, he's kind of ruling the country, because the country can't have democracy while that's going on. So the idea of, like, for years I said, how did a person get born with that kind of horoscope, the karma to have that power? What did he do in past lives to get that kind of power, more than any leader in the last 500 years? But his horoscope fits with, when Pluto goes into Capricorn, if there's going to be a dictator, if there's going to be someone with massive power, that's going to fit well. Now, China in the last year, they haven't doubled down, they have tripled and quadrupled down in their suppression of people, in their they have millions and millions of cameras and drones checking on people. They have taken Hong Kong and completely remade Hong Kong. It was supposed to be, we're going to let Hong Kong function the same way as ever, but in fact they said, nope, you're going to play by our rules.
Yes.
But here's what you have to understand about this. Here's what you have to understand. There was a show, I'm talking about this because there was a show on China, on Xi Jinping. I couldn't believe what I heard. This man his whole family was ruined. He was in the wealthy class. They got ruined by the communist government. Xi Jinping at the age of 18 was sent to a farm to work I mean, he was brutalized, comes back into the party and takes over. But Xi Jinping used to be so different. He is now like a dictator. He even changed the rules. He changed the rules so that he could stay in power more.
Forever, till he's alive.
Yes, but it's more than that. I didn't know this. Xi Jinping is now a cult of personality. They have taken off certain movies. They've taken off certain television shows because it doesn't fit with China. They even have on the cell phone, they have these apps where you learn about Xi Jinping thinking, Xi Jinping's thoughts. And they have a game show where you go on and they test you. What does Xi Jinping think about this? And what are his thoughts on that? It's a cult of personality. But understand this. The people that knew Xi Jinping, they said, we don't recognize him. This is not who he was. Okay? So Pluto in Capricorn fits. Now, as I said, you cannot simply say, oh, look, the planets are there and the planets are there, and this happened, and that means that it rules that. It has to make sense. This makes sense. It is making sense to me now that what is happening in the world is Pluto in Capricorn. Pluto is deciding to shake up these systems. Now, also understand this. You know, people say, oh my God, Xi Jinping is terrible because he's doing this and he's doing that and he's doing this. But think of it from his point of view for a second. He's been thinking about the fact, how did Russia fall? What happened to Russia? Oh, there were separatists and the country's all separated. So he's thinking about this and saying, we're not going to have that happen. We're going to clamp down and control it so that doesn't happen. So from his point of view, it actually makes sense. Okay. So I'm just saying that this is, I think, Pluto and Capricorn. But one other thing, this doesn't mean, oh, great. So for 6 months or a year, we'll have a cult of personality, and then suddenly the world's going to be great. This could be a cult of personality for the next 20 years. Pluto's going to be in Capricorn for 20 years. It could, it doesn't change instantly. Those, World War II, all those Pluto effects, they didn't change that fast. What were you going to say?
So I wanted to ask a question here. My question is that, as you say, that it's going to shake up the systems, and all those authoritative systems are springing up, as we're seeing, and not just in the US or the UK, Vietnam, many places across the globe, we are seeing people, being authoritative even in the name of democracy. My question to you very clearly is that, as you see, the systems are shaken up. Pluto, does it shake them up just to invite people into the web, and tell them that, yes, please be authoritative, but on a later date, it will shake them up again and make them face the rubles?
What's the question?
The question is that Pluto has shaken up societies, made them authoritative, but will the same Pluto again shake the societies up and bring about a kind of democracy?
That remains to be seen. All I can tell you is Pluto is death and rebirth. Pluto is killing democracy, that's for sure. It's killing democracy. But you have to understand, it's killing. We haven't had a democracy in the United States for I don't know how long. We've had autocracy. We've had oligarchies. The corporations have owned the politicians. You think the people want the guns the way it is? No, most of them say, no, do it the other way. Social welfare, they want these things, but the government's not going to give it to them because the corporations are, so the governments are corrupt. This is what I think. And Pluto's coming along and saying, okay, you guys want to run it that way? We're going to knock the daylights out of it. Now, it remains to be seen how long the autocracies are going to last remains to be seen. I don't know the answer to that. I do know how Pluto works. And Pluto usually works by it pops a pimple. You have a boil, Pluto pops it. You have a marriage that's no good, Pluto hits Venus or Pluto hits the 7th house and it erupts. It's a big eruption. So is this really the world going towards authoritarianism, or is this an eruption? Is it an explosion and an eruption? To me, it seems like an explosion and an eruption. In the United States, you've got two extremes. There's extremes on the liberal side, and then now, I'm not saying that one side isn't worse than the other. To me, it seems like one side is worse than the other, but that's beside the point. If you look at part of the reason that the right in the United States is so frightened and freaked out is because they see the extreme left and they say, we don't want that. So you've got these extremes going on, and to me, that's an explosion. That's an eruption. So it's got to fight. So if Pluto hits Venus or Pluto hits the 7th house, it's not like, oh, the marriage is over. It's not that. It's that all of a sudden the wife finds out the guy's been having affairs, or the guy finds out that the woman, whatever. So there's a pimple gets popped. So a boil is now getting popped all over the world. And at the present moment, we had 20 years for Pluto and Capricorn. At the present moment, it's shoving democracy aside and it's getting to the authoritarian. I don't think the authoritarian will last, but this is Kali.
Yeah, exactly.
This is Kali Yuga. This is Kali Yuga. It is a dark yuga.
Exactly. And as you put it, that is exactly what I have been having on my mind while listening to you, that probably it is enticing people to come to power and then see them topple off into all of this. This is what I have.
Yeah, I don't know how I don't know how it's going to last, but at least I understand. At least I'm beginning to understand, because the symbolism fits. If it doesn't fit, I don't use it. Okay,
Yeah.
like when it comes to the pandemic, I'm still thinking about it. You have to. That's what astrology is about. It's about the thought process. And I keep thinking, why the pandemic, Pluto? And maybe it's not even connected. Maybe it's not. Now we know it's connected in the sense that all the business is shut down.
Exactly.
Listen to what my wife said. She says, people don't want to work. Oh, you're going to pay me those wages? I'm going to live like a pauper for the rest of my life. I'd rather not work. That's Pluto in Capricorn. That's a boil that people have been living with, and they're saying, no, you either pay me high wages or I'd rather sit home and live with my parents. So there's all kinds of effects, but that's what I think is going on. And I think this is Pluto in Capricorn, and I don't think it's gonna just fix itself in a year or two. I think it's gonna go on for a while, but and they talk about civil war. In our country, they're talking about getting rid of the federal government and states will go by themselves. Maybe that's a better idea. That would be Pluto. If that's a better idea, that would be Pluto saying, your idea of a federal government doesn't work. Let the liberals live in these states, let the conservatives live in these states. That's a possibility. I'm more concerned about China. China, that particular system is, they have drones and they have cameras everywhere, and this guy is Xi Jinping is more powerful than anybody. First they had Mao, and then they had Deng Xiaoping, and Deng Xiaoping was the opposite of Mao. He brought along capitalism, and he said, let's make the system, let people make money. And then all of a sudden Xi Jinping comes along and says, yeah, you can make money, but don't make too much, because if you make too much, like Jack Ma runs Alibaba, nobody's seen the guy since October 20th. They don't know where he is or what, because he's making too much money. That could threaten the state. So I don't know enough about India to know what's happening there. I do know that they have the same business between the right hates the left and blah, blah, blah. But I don't know what else is going. Maybe you know.
So you very nicely summed it up and said that old systems will break, new systems are going to be put in place. And as we see,
it could be difficult for some years. It's not. Oh, I wanted to say this. So what happened the last time that Pluto went into sidereal Capricorn? Can you guess? There was a revolution. So the orbit of Pluto is between 248 and 250 years is Pluto, okay? So what happened was, Pluto is now coming back to the natal Pluto. So 250 years ago, the American Revolution happened, and that's the people in America saying, we don't want your government. We want our own government. So that's Pluto in Capricorn.
So I'm looking forward to seeing more on Pluto in Capricorn in the coming times. So have you mentioned this in your book, James? Has this come up in your Braha Sutras?
I just realized it 2 days ago. I was reading through the book on how mundane astrology works. I dropped the book. I turned to my wife. I said, Vashti, oh my God, I just finally realized what the heck is going on. I spent the last 24 hours trying to research what happened the last time with Pluto, but it's not just the facts, it's the thought process. So I've been trying to find Isabel Hickey's book on Pluto. I used to have 10 copies of them, because when Isabel Hickey wrote her book, Astrology, A Cosmic Science, she didn't put Pluto in there because as she was writing it, she didn't know enough. So she left Pluto out, and a couple of years later, she wrote a pamphlet on Pluto, and I bought 10 of them in the late 70s. It's 1978. I bought 10 copies to give to friends. I don't have one of them. I can't find one of them. I wanted to see what she said, you know. But so I've just been thinking about this really for the last day, and yes, it is going to go into the Braha Sutras. You can bet that.
I'm looking forward to to getting a copy of the Braha Sutras as soon as it is out.
It will be out mid-February. We're working on it right now, and there's going to be lots of pictures in there. There's, you know, each sutra is going to have its own page, and some of those will have little pictures underneath.
Okay, so it's been very artistically designed, I guess, with all that you've been doing. My
neighbor, I don't know if I told you, I was about 2 months ago, I was sitting in the temple. I don't go into the temple that much. We live on Mount Soma. There's a temple, Hindu temple here. And they said, oh, why don't you come and help decorate for Ganesha's birthday? So we go to decorate, and the women are putting up flowers and fruit, and there's nothing to do. So I sit down and I start meditating. And all of a sudden it hits me. I don't have a cover for the Braha Sutras. Normally I think about that, 10 pages into the writing. I said, oh my God, I haven't even thought of it. And immediately my neighbor, Harmony, comes to mind. She does this incredible artwork. And I said, and her artwork doesn't look anything like, her stuff is really modern, but all I knew is her stuff is gorgeous. I said, do you think you could do a book cover? She said, I'd be honored. And she made 6 or 7 book covers. One is better than the other.
It's a beautiful book cover, James. Looking forward to the book coming up.
Yeah.
It was pleasure talking to James, understanding that the outer planets, or the planets which have a lot of impact that we cannot see in Vedic astrology, have so much to say about the mundane. James, we'll meet with you again sometime and talk about the other planets in mundane astrology. Thank you so much. Please hit the bell icon for fresh updates. Don't forget to like, share, and comment on the videos, and please subscribe to our channel.